Welcome back, everyone, to Catholic Pipes. My name is Kadesh, your host for today. So, I got a good video, hopefully, for you guys to talk about stems today and do a little recap of the Muletown Pipe Show. But before we start, I just got some of this stuff from the Seattle Pipe Club, Virginia Jazz. As many of you guys have probably tried the Seattle Pipe Club tobaccos. If you haven't, you are missing out. A sublime line of tobaccos from the late Joe Langford, who was, he was a master blender of pipe tobacco. And the pipe tobacco from the Seattle Pipe Club, every single one of them that I've tried has been an absolute hit. They're just mellow, or they're full flavor, nice, rich, creamy smokes. There's just nothing really lacking in them, which is hard for me to say about a lot of blends. There's some blends you go out there, you smoke it, and may not be for you, or it's just kind of missing a component. I've not found that the case with the boutique brands from Seattle Pipe Club. They've just been super good. But this one is Virginia Jazz, their signature series, and it's Virginia Perique Crumb Cake with 10-year-old Virginias and Acadian Perique. So, let me read the back to you. In the 1920s, jazz age changed America. The new music moved people. New Orleans, the Great Gatsby, Prohibition, radio, and national urge to cut loose. Music and cultures mashed together. Our Virginia Perique starts with 10-year-old matured red Virginias blended with a good amount of Cajun tobacco, Acadian Perique. Add some tasty stove Virginia, pressed, crumb cake cut. Virginia Jazz is an exceptional smoke and music to vapor lovers. As Louisiana locals say, pass a good time, share. Anyway, let's taste it. I mean, first let me get this guy out here. I mean, the smell is just, it's sweet, it's spicy. It reminds me of like kind of chocolate-covered raisins. It comes in these nice cakes right here, which are really easy to rub out into a nice flake that goes into your tobacco pipe. So, smells amazing. And let me see, this is the good thing about the pipe maker. You have all sorts of things you can use as a tamper here. Fingers, screws, nails, X-Acto knives, bamboo, whatever's on hand. It is stinky in a good way. Like the smell you get is like, it smells like dinner's cooking. There's a real savory note to it. It almost smells like burning like sweet grain cereal almost. The flavor of the smoke's very, very, very creamy in the mouth. Now I'm going to do a little French inhale because I want to get some more of that flavor. See what other notes I'm missing. Get some more chocolatiness that kind of comes through on it. A little bit of spice. Burns nice and cool. Almost a leathery component too. That's actually a very complicated tobacco in a good way. A lot of notes going on. This is one-dimensional would not be a way to describe this. There's a lot of layers to it. And I can imagine it's probably going to get better, or the flavor is going to change as it gets closer down to the bottom of the bowl. But as I enjoy this pipe and tobacco, I want to talk about the Muletown show. This was in Columbia, Tennessee, which is, I want to say, east. It's on one of the other side of Nashville, 40 minutes. But we landed at midnight on Thursday, or like 12:01 on a Friday morning. We got there. We wanted to see the city a little bit, so we asked our car rental guy what's available, or like what's still open. So they told us to go to the Kid Rock Honky Tonk, which was 15 minutes away from the Nashville airport. And wow, it looked like Fremont Street. It was crazy. I mean, it was a sight for, it was a sight to behold, just how cool it was, flying in dark. and the city is still alive. This is 1 o'clock in the morning, and it is still hustling and bustling with people everywhere. But I will say it's definitely a tourist trap, because it was expensive. I went and I tried to find the shadiest bar that I could find that looked run down, hoping to get a cheap drink. You get a long flight, you've been flying for about 5 hours. You're like, I could use some libations. So I go get 2 whiskey sours, which is my cocktail of choice. So whiskey sour. If I don't know what to order in the new place, I'll try the whiskey sour, and then I'll go from there. 2 of them, my tab was $45. $45! I almost cried. Blew through a nice chunk of a food budget just in 1 hour. It was crazy. So we immediately left there. Next day at the Columbia show, and it was fantastic. The Briarworks location out there in Columbia is amazing. They have such an amazing little setup going on. Like when you open up the big garage door that opens up to this kind of like small brick factory, it's a storefront and a bar up front where the drinks were reasonably priced. All right, a little bit cheaper than where I live. So that was a pleasant surprise. But cigar bar lounge, seating on the inside, dartboards, tables, TV screen in there. And then there's some doors that went to the back half, which was the production room floor where the pipes were made, but that was cleared out for the show. Beautiful, gorgeous. And I hope you guys check out the video, which is kind of a little bit of a little montage of what the area looked like. But what I will say about pipe shows is they are the lifeblood to the pipe community. I mean, a lot of us here who probably watched this show, you might visit your local pipe and tobacco shop. You might go to a pipe club. And I did all the same things, but it was the shows that really changed pipe smoking for me. If you are a pipe smoker, get out to a show. There is nothing more amazing than to fly out to a different state, and in this case across the country, and go to an event like that where you have something in common with everybody there. That's the beauty. No matter where you turn, there's a friend. And you guys have pipes that are this great bridge builder and wall destroyer. Like, you can sit at a table and you could have several people at different income brackets, different sides of the political spectrum. None of that has to get mentioned because all you're talking about is pipes. You're at a table where the humble corncob pipe is just as revered as $1,000 pipe. It's beautiful. It's amazing. You get to get away. You get to see amazing pipes. You get to have wonderful tobacco. People bring out their special bottles of whiskey or bourbon or scotch. They'll bring out special tins of tobacco that they save specifically for shows where they crack it open and everybody at the table can try some. It is a wonderful experience that will completely enliven your entire pipe smoking hobby. I can't speak highly enough about them. There are several other shows that will be happening. There's the Chicago show that I think is happening in 2 to 3 weeks. I will not be going to that one, but I will be at Vegas. And just like last time, I will be preparing for the Vegas show, which will be in October at the Palace Station. It's a little bit off the strip. And I hope to see a lot more people there. As things keep on going, I will be throwing an idea out there for a meet and greet dinner. If that's something that you guys are interested in, if you guys plan on going to that show and you would like to have a nice private dinner with myself and a bunch of other fellow fans of the show to talk theology, to talk pipes, and just to have a really great time, please comment in the comment section whether you think that that's something you'd be interested in or not. For the meat and potatoes of this show, I want to talk about stems. Stems are so important to a pipe, and sometimes they get left on the back burner. So I want to talk a little bit about what goes into a handmade stem, and then I definitely want to talk about stem design. So first thing to remember is that a stem is an intimate and integral part to the pipe. That is where you put your mouth on. So for all intents and purposes, it's the most intimate part of the pipe because it's going to be in your mouth. So with that being said, we have a bunch of nerve endings on our lips, on our tongue. So we want to make sure that the mouthpiece, the stem itself, is comfortable. Now, that sweet spot. So let's take a look at this pipe here for us, get a good example of something like here. So basic pipe anatomy of a stem. So we have our saddle, the bit, and then the bite zone. And then we have our slot. So the bite zone right about here. So it's right behind the lip. This is the part where the most contact happens between your teeth and your tongue and your mouth in general. So there is a certain thickness that we want. 4 millimeters is as thick as you'd want to go. Shooting a little bit under is fine too. So 3.6 to 4 millimeters is right around the sweet spot that you want to always find the thickness or thinness of your stems to be. That is what I found makes a very comfortable stem for me personally, and that has been the industry standard for handmade pipes, is keeping it within that range. And that's what I think makes these artisan pipe stems extraordinarily comfortable. The other thing too is with the stems is, once again, they're an integral part not just to the function of the pipe, but the overall composition. So you can get really crazy with your stems, especially if you understand that they are a part of the pipe too. They are a component to the art. So you want them to either be proportional, or you want your saddle design to be able to help exemplify the overall shape that you have going on. So I got a couple examples here that I'll show you. So let's start with this one from Scott Klein. Beautiful blowfish shape. Asymmetrical all around. Now, what's interesting about this particular pipe is we have this nice beautiful chunk of cow horn at the end. But if we look at it, we realize that it is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 6, so it's hexagonal. It's a hexagon shape, right? What this artist did, so if we look here, they made the saddle, the part that's the very base of the stem, they made it an octagon as well. So when you put it in and everything's lined up properly, the facets line up with the facets here. So it's a beautiful composition, and the length of the stem matches towards the base of the bowl to the end of the shank. So there's proportionality here too, where the length of the stem corresponds to another length somewhere else on the pipe. That's kind of a generic rule of thumb. How long do I make my stem? Well, there's several ways to go about that. One of them is to, hold on, let me grab something here. Don't mind me. So there's a couple ways you can find out what the appropriate length stem is. One of which is you can be straightforward and say, okay, I'm just going to take a measurement of the bowl from the bottom to the top, and I'm going to use that as my length. So we see here. And if we look at the top of the bowl, look at that. Pretty close. So that's one way. You can measure the shank, we can put that here, you can measure the bowl, and then you can use that as your stem length. And that will create a pleasing effect on the eyes of proportionality, because whether your brain recognizes it or not, it's realizing that, hey, there's some equal lengths going on here. So to the eye, it looks like a very cohesive piece. The other thing is I was talking about with the saddle designs. If we look here at the end of the shank, we see this nice curve, right? Kind of curves out parabolically. And then we have the saddle design was set to match that. So it creates cohesiveness and continuity in the design of the pipe. Same thing too with this really cool piece from Jeremiah Sundal. We have this nice pot shape. But then if we look, we see how wide the shank is. And he went ahead and did the same thing as well. He created his own little spacer that color complements the rest of the pipe, but he made the saddle obviously as wide as the shank itself. So we see that there's various shapes and ways you can go about when you're thinking about stem design. Oh, and I forgot to mention too, with the stems, not only do we have that, but we have the tenon itself. So the tenon is going to be the part of the pipe that goes into the mortise. So these lines are completely parallel, so are the lines in here, so it's a nice snug fit. And this part can be done one of two ways. You can create your own tenon and then insert it into the stem material, and for that we use a material called Delrin. And the way that Delrin is made, the material itself has a very interesting property where it's low on friction. So it helps to ensure that your stem never gets stuck inside of the shank. I mean, if you guys have ever been to an antique shop and you've gotten a pipe from an antique shop and you've tried to clean it, have you ever tried to sit there and try to crank that stem out? It's because the stems were made of the whole thing was made of the same material, which brings us to the next style of tenon is called an integral tenon, meaning that you take your full rod of stem material and you'll use your lathe to cut or turn down the tenon itself. So it's all one piece. Now, why would we do something like that? Well, there's several reasons. If we're going to do an integral tenon, we have to think about, for instance, the saddle design. So look how thin the saddle is. Look how thick the tenon is. There's no way for me to insert a tenon in here. There's just not enough room for me to get a firm grip as I epoxy and I score up this material so it's secure in there. You want to have it to be at least, a decent amount in there. So if you're making your stem very thin, your saddle very thin, I'm going to cut right through into that tenon. So because I want to have a thin saddle design, I'm going to have to make an integral tenon, because then I don't have to worry about cutting into this material. So there's pros and cons to both. But so like saddle design will dictate whether or not I make an integral tenon or I make my own and insert it into the stem material itself. So if you really like the integral tenons, so you hear that clicking noise you probably did, that's that friction from the tenon being made of the same material. That's a lot of friction. This one has a Delrin tenon. As you can see how thick the base is all the way up to about here. So that Delrin tenon is probably sitting in right about here, completely out of the danger zone of us cutting into it. And as I insert it here, nice and smooth, no clicking, no noises, because that's the property of the Delrin tenon. So besides being thin and having really beautiful saddle designs, the one thing that also separates a handmade stem and what makes them desirable is actually all the work that goes in here. See, this slot is created by hand with little saws and a bunch of sandpaper. And so we really try to, as artisans, really open up inside of here. Because what happens is you have a drill bit like such that kind of goes into here with a 1 millimeter point. So if we carried that 1 millimeter all the way through and that was just a 1 millimeter hole, there wouldn't be enough draw. It'd be like trying to suck peanut butter out of the straw. You can't do that. So we compensate for that by creating a flare on the inside, like a V. So we create this V that goes about that far into the drilling right there. And so now what we've done is we've made this V, but since we've opened up all that airway, now that air can come through and open up. So it creates a much more open, breathable draw as compared to maybe some factory pipes where they don't do that. But what they'll do is they'll use, if you look into some factory made pipes, you'll realize that it's not funneled. It looks like it is, but it's just a little circular drill bit like that that's drilled right into the stem like that, and then it's just a hole. And usually it's a little bit thicker than 1 millimeter, but since you're using a thicker drill bit, the stem's got to be thicker too. So you end up with a little bit thicker stem in your mouth. You'll end up with an open draw, but the comfortability is what a lot of people look for in handmade pipes. Because we do that funneling, it allows us to be able to keep the stem much thinner and much more comfortable in one's mouth. As you can also see, there's different colors of stems. Traditionally, a lot of us use black ebonite. You can get Cumberland, and Cumberland is just what we call ebonite that is mixed with color. So this is all the same material, but just with different colors. I don't have an example, but there's also Bakelite you can use. Bakelite is an old plastic. I think it was like the 1950s, 1960s. Everything was made of Bakelite. It does have asbestos in it, so you got to have your proper gear when you're working with it. But it has beautiful colors as well. It feels great on the teeth, which is another reason why we utilize this particular ebonite or vulcanized rubber, is that it's softer on the teeth. Acrylic doesn't oxidize or turn colors like ebonite will, but it feels harder, more clickety-clackety, plasticky on the teeth. So there's things you give and take with. If you take really good care of your stems, keep them out of direct sunlight, oil them with obsidian oil, you can keep them looking fresh, nice, crisp color for a very long time. So if you want to do that upkeep, or you don't mind a little oxidation, but because you enjoy the feeling of the softness of this on your teeth, perfect. Otherwise, you can ask for acrylic from a maker, or other people do acrylic, and it stays shiny forever, pretty much, but it has that harder impact on the teeth. And Bakelite's somewhere in the middle. It's a little bit on the softer side, does have a little plasticky feel. It does oxidize, but when it oxidizes, it actually oxidizes into cooler colors. So with black, it just turns gray, yellow, brown, just really gross. Bakelite can oxidize into all sorts of different colors, which makes it a very nice and desirable material to work. Very hard to find, and very hard to use sometimes. But outside of that, yes, we got a saddle design here that's called a dome saddle. Regular saddles, but yeah. There's all sorts of different things you can do with stems, and you can probably see maybe in the shot here of all these files. I use a great deal of files for the stems as well to make sure that you're getting the lines nice and crisp. Everything is very even. Yeah, that's pretty much the extent of the stems, and I'll even show you one that I'm working on right now. It's for this very long bamboo pipe that I'm working on for somebody. But yeah, even this, trying to fit this is still the saddle on the bamboo pipe right here. So even just trying to thin everything out and making sure everything looks cohesive and flows is a skill set in and of itself. So, all right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on stems, a little bit about the Muletown show. I hope to see you guys in the Vegas show. So just Google. I'll see if I can put a link to the Vegas Pipe Show. They have special rates on rooms right now. The hotel does have rooms you can smoke in. It's a fantastic show. It's a small, intimate kind of feeling show. You get to meet artisans from all over the world. You get to have great conversations, try wonderful whiskeys, bourbons, or whatever people are bringing to share. Wonderful tobaccos that you may never get another chance in your life to taste except for that show. You get to see beautiful pipes that just get your imagination running. And it's Vegas, so if you don't want to stay at the resort, it's an adult playground, so there's any and everything that you can imagine to do. Shows, mostly just shows, casinos, amusement parks, food, you name it, it's there. So this is Kadesh with Catholic Pipes. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.